Have you ever dropped your car off for a repair and just kind of wondered, what actually happens back there, behind the big garage door? It's easy to think it's just a bit of tinkering, you know? But what's really going on is this whole world of high-stakes problem solving. So today, we're going to pull back that curtain on one of the most critical systems in your car, the steering. And believe me, what it takes to get it right is pretty amazing. You know the feeling, right? You hear some weird clunk or a squeal, and the guessing game starts. You ask a buddy, you look it up online. Oh, that's probably this, or sounds like it could be that. We've all done it. But for the person you're trusting with your safety, well, guessing just isn't an option. The real difference between an amateur and a pro is knowing versus guessing. So how do they know? Well, they've got the playbook. And for this explainer, we're actually digging into an official Australian government guide that spells out exactly what it takes to be a steering technician. This isn't about hunches or gut feelings. It's a standardized expert process, and it's designed for one thing: getting the job done right every single time. To really get what's going on here, it helps to stop thinking of them as just a mechanic and start thinking of them as a detective. Seriously, a problem with your steering? That's the mystery. And the technician? They're the lead investigator on the case, using evidence and procedure to track down the culprit. And every good detective story starts with a clear mission. According to the official procedure, the mission is simple: find the fault, fix it, and make the car perfectly safe again. The stakes really couldn't be higher, right? I mean, this is all about making sure you have total control when you're out on the road. So where does our detective start? You'd think they just grab a wrench and dive in, but nope. The first and maybe the most critical part of the job is all about preparation. It's about gathering all the clues and coming up with a plan of attack before a single bolt ever gets turned. A great detective is methodical. So first things first, they review the case file. That's the work order, any notes you left. Second, they develop a strategy, thinking through all the possible causes and how they're going to test their theories. Then, they assess the scene for any hazards. And finally, they make sure their entire toolkit is ready to go and working perfectly. Okay, with all the prep work done, the real investigation begins. This is where all that deep knowledge and analytical skill really comes into play. It's time to get to the bottom of what's really going on with that car. And this is not as simple as it used to be. Not even close. Steering technology has changed so dramatically. A technician today can't just know about one kind of system. They have to be an expert in basically the entire history and the future of steering technology. I mean, just look at this range of expertise. It's pretty impressive. A technician has to understand everything from the pure mechanics of an old-school manual steering rack to the complex fluids of hydraulic power steering, all the way up to the modern, sensor-driven electronic and fully electric systems. And here's the kicker. Each one has its own quirks and requires a totally different way of thinking to diagnose. A lot of times, the investigation comes down to a game of millimeters and degrees. That slight pull you feel to one side, or maybe your tires are wearing out unevenly. To you, it's a small annoyance. To a detective technician, it's a massive clue pointing to a very precise mathematical problem. To solve the puzzle, they have to speak this kind of secret language of angles. There's camber, which is how the wheels tilt in or out. That affects your grip. There's caster, which is the angle that helps your steering wheel straighten itself out after a turn. And then there's toe, which is whether your tires point slightly inward or outward, and that is absolutely crucial for handling. These aren't just fancy words. They're precise measurements that tell the whole story. So you see what's happening? They're testing fluid pressures, analyzing data from electronic sensors, measuring these supercritical angles. And with each test, they're narrowing down the possibilities. They're eliminating suspects one by one until only one remains, the root cause of the problem. And just like that, the mystery's solved. So the whodunit part of the job is done. Now it's time to actually execute the fix. This is where all that diagnosis turns into action. And this is a really big but, this isn't improvisation. The absolute #1 rule, the prime directive you see over and over in the official procedures, is you follow the manufacturer's specifications to the letter. Every car is this incredibly complex piece of engineering, and the repair has to honor that original design. That's what makes it safe. And the fix could be any number of things. The performance standards show a technician has to be ready to replace anything from a huge component like the power steering pump itself, down to a simple leaking hose, a worn-out tie rod end, or even just these tiny little seals that are causing a pressure loss. Every single repair has its own unique, by-the-book procedure. And you'd think once the new part is in, the job's over, right? Not quite. A whole series of post-repair tests are mandatory. The technician has to prove the fix worked and that the system is now operating exactly the way the manufacturer intended. This is the ultimate quality control. All right, the car is fixed, it's running perfectly. Now it's time to close the case. A true professional knows that these final touches are just as important as the repair itself. This means doing one last final inspection, making sure the work area is totally clean, and, this is critical, completing all the documentation. That paperwork becomes the official record of the case, spelling out the fault, the fix, and the final result. When you look back at this whole process, you see all the hands-on, physical skill, for sure. But what this whole thing really shows is that the most important tool a technician uses isn't a wrench or a scanner. It's an intellectual skill, one of the foundation skills listed in the official training. And that skill is numeracy. And we're not just talking about simple arithmetic here. This is the ability to measure components in angles, in degrees, in millimeters, and then use math to calculate these tiny, tiny deviations from the manufacturer's perfect spec. It's that high-level math that separates a precise, safe repair from a dangerous guess. Ultimately, when you get your car back, the goal is that you don't have to think about the steering at all. You just want it to work flawlessly, safely, effortlessly. But behind that effortless feeling is a detective, a skilled professional who did all the thinking, all the investigating, and all the calculating for you. And that, right there, is the secret life of a great repair.